I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Ruth Corcoran, owner of Corcoran Communications. What's up, podcast episode 48. Welcome to the On the Stacks podcast, Ruth.
Thanks. I'm just so excited to be here finally.
Yeah, and we have a first today. We had the dogs on the stacks, which it was the first dogs on the stacks.
And I'm surprised that it went as well as it did because you know how my dogs are.
I know. It actually went very well.
They were very well behaved.
I think we were all surprised.
With enough treats.
Yeah,
They're good.
enough treats, yeah. So let's start with a little bit about your background. Talk about where you're from, where you grew up, and your school, and how you got started doing what you're doing.
Well, I grew up in the Lehigh Valley. I'm originally from the Allentown, Bethlehem area. I actually went to school for criminal justice, which is something that I never did. I had multiple jobs when I lived down there. Everything from working in bakeries, making donuts, to working in security at various retail outlets, to selling pictures. So just about everything. I got married down there and I moved up here when I was pregnant with my first son, Greg. That was around 1985, 86. When I moved up here, I didn't work. I had him and I worked part-time at night, basically, and I went back to school. I didn't want to become a police officer. Originally, I wanted to be in the FBI, and I totally changed my mind about that. I was back in the police one day when I loved all those cop shows and wanted to be one. So I went back to school for information systems because computers were just getting hot. And I thought, well, if I eventually did want to get back in the job market, that would be a good opportunity. And I'm so glad that I did that because that did help me eventually get back into the job market.
Then what did you do after that? Did you get a job like in that field?
Well, what happened was my first marriage didn't work out, and I ended up getting divorced when my son was 5 and my daughter was only 3, and I was totally broke. So as a single mom, I was forced to get back into the job market. I got a full-time job at a bank, and I had 2 part-time jobs. I had Occasions Gift Basket, which I made up myself, my first little entrepreneurial
it was like your own
business.
thing.
It was my own thing.
I didn't know that.
Where I did personalized gift baskets. So people would say, it's my sister's birthday and she likes, I don't know, bowling. And I would do all bowling related things, or it was somebody's shower. So my house was literally littered from bottom to top with just filler for gift baskets and items for gift baskets. And I also waitressed part-time on the weekends. So I worked pretty much nonstop, full-time, part-time, to make ends meet. And it got me through the tough times.
Yeah. So I mean, what was that like, working 3 jobs as a single mom?
You don't have a lot of time. You don't have time, for yourself at all, but you learn a lot. Like, I think I was a good role model for my kids, which is something that I got from my parents. So I think they saw me working hard and knew that you had to work hard if you wanted to get ahead. I didn't have much time for a personal life, but I did meet a guy, your dad, who also had 2 young kids the same ages as mine. And we kind of started dating because we had something in common. We had our kids all the time.
Yep. So you were working those 3 jobs, and then what happened after that? You eventually got into banking, marketing at a bank.
Right. So eventually I worked my way up through the ranks at the bank. I took lots of continuing education classes in business, in banking, in marketing, and worked my way through some positions. I always had an interest in marketing and public relations. And eventually I landed the marketing director position at Mellon Bank. And I was lucky in that position. It gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people in the community, to network, to go out and work on behalf of community organizations. And I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about that job.
So you were the marketing director at Mellon. And then, what year was this?
That was probably late 90s, maybe like 98.
Okay. And then a couple years after that is when you then decided to go out and start your own business. Was there anything else in between?
Yes. So in the late 90s, one of my former bosses at Mellon Bank had a friend with a local advertising agency, and they were looking for someone to start a PR division. He thought I would be a great fit for the job, but I was a little hesitant because I felt the security of the bank and I had health insurance and benefits and everything else. So I was a little bit nervous. And at that same time, I was getting actually remarried to your dad. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot. So I left the bank. I left the comfort of the bank and I started at the ad agency. And I was charged with trying to get clients for PR and, start this PR division. And actually Metz Enterprises, now Metz Culinary Management, was the first client I brought on board. I stayed there for about a year. It was a little bit, the pace of an advertising agency was actually a little bit slow pace for me, believe it or not. So I found myself not that happy and wanting to strike out on my own. So that's how eventually I did decide to go out on my own.
So then you started Corcoran Communications.
Yes. So I started Corcoran Communications in the year 2000. And what I wanted to do was work at home. So I started it out of my house. The kids were in school, and I thought it would be a good way to be home after school and focus on the things that I loved. So initially, Corcoran Communications started as a PR and event coordination agency. I didn't feel there was any other competition in the area. Nobody was really focusing on that. And I was lucky. Met stayed with me. They made the move with me to the new agency. So I did have a client. Because I'll tell you what, it was really tough that first year in business. I had a lot of doubts because it wasn't that easy to get business. So I went back to my networking and all the people that I had met through the years, and I started contacting everybody I knew in business to see who might want to come on board as a client. And I eventually landed the Scranton Cultural Center, Perenni Randolph, Lewis and Freeman. In fact, 20 years later, Lewis and Freeman is still a client. And then I had some great event jobs in the early days. I did events for the Philharmonic and the Chamber, Ken Marquis' opening of his laundry building in Scranton. So I lucked out with some things like that.
Yeah. So what was it like, just starting your business? You made the jump, you made a couple big jumps in your career, and now you're out on your own. Like, what was that like just starting out?
It was scary, and you don't think you're going to make it, and you don't realize the work you have to put into it. At that time, I had to go out and sell, and then I had to come back and do the work because it was pretty much me. It meant 12 to 14-hour work days, and the time that I thought I was going to have at home with my family, I was there, but I was at my computer all the time. And it also meant facing a lot of rejection. You're not used to that when you're just working in a regular job. When you're going out trying to land business, the no's, get to you after a while.
Yeah.
I faced a lot of obstacles. I quickly learned that I had to adapt. So when I did get a client, I learned fast that I needed to do what they needed as far as work if I wanted to keep them. So I branched out and, eventually did some design work and web work and whatever they needed, branding. And now I have clients across a variety of industries in 3 states. I have credit unions, law firms, entertainment, real estate, food service, and more.
So what were some of the most interesting clients that you've had over the years? I know there's a long list, and you've done some cool things like, around the country. So like, what were some interesting ones, maybe some fun stories?
Well, I looked back to try to remember because you actually forget some of the fun stories. So one of the most interesting I had back in the beginning days was a business called Endless Echoes. And it was a man who started a web-based service for broadcasting personalized messages into space, which was new and innovative at the time. So he didn't have a lot of money to market, and we were looking for something creative to do. So we sent out some creative press releases that I put together and lucked into getting one picked up by the Associated Press. And it literally was in hundreds of publications across the country. It was on television stations and radio and newspapers, and it just became a hit. It was just something different. I also have a client who's a film producer, Sen Art Films in Robert May. And through him, I had the opportunity to do so much. I did some work at the Toronto Film Festival. I did some work for him on location in Utah, Salt Lake City, Lake Powell, on the set of Bonneville, where I was taking photos and doing some investor relations. And I got to meet Joan Allen and Kathy Bates and Jessica Lange. My daughter came out and was an extra in the film, and we actually got to go to the movies one night with Joan Allen. And that never would have happened if it wasn't for the marketing business. Another great client that I had so much fun with was Feld Entertainment out of New York, and they're the promoter for Ringling Brothers Circus, Disney on Ice, Monster Jam. So I was hired probably about 8 years ago as a publicist for shows in Wilkes-Barre, Allentown, Erie, and some in Atlantic City. I was working most memorably for the final days of the Ringling Elephants. And it was an emotional time for the performers. It was another thing that was just garnered so much national media attention because it was one of the last shows. And again, the following year, when it was the end of the circus, it was the same thing. So I got to be a part of all that.
Wow.
And putting together like really cool events. I'll never forget one that we did in Atlantic City. We did an elephant brunch. And we got White House Subs, the famous sub place in Atlantic City, to make a gigantic sub that was all vegetarian, all vegetables for the elephants. And we did this huge media event around that. And it was just so cool. I've done work for Chevy and GM doing guerrilla marketing and bringing their vehicles. This was during the recession, probably around 2007, 2008, where we brought vehicles out to the people because they weren't going into dealerships. So we actually brought them on site at various events, and we did ride and drives where, we would get you out in a car. So we might bring a Camaro to like a festival, and people loved it. And they were selling cars that way. And that was fun. And I did that for a couple of years. I did work for Encana Natural Gas Company when they were in town. And all of these different clients meant I had to completely learn a new business, which was a great learning experience, but it was a little bit crazy.
I was going to say, how did you learn all these different businesses, and what was kind of like your takeaway from working with all these, national clients?
Well, I learned that you could do it. In the beginning, I never said no to anything. If somebody said, "Can you do something?" I just said yes, and then figured out a way to do it. A lot of the stuff I learned was self-taught. I'm very persistent when it comes to media, and I know if you bug them enough, you can get the attention you need. And, in PR, that's really what matters. It's getting that attention for your client. I think all of it was a learning curve. And I think the more we can absorb, the better off we're going to be. Once you have a client in entertainment like that, it's very easy to go out and say, "Hey, I did all this work for Feld and I worked for Disney," and you look like a pro.
Yeah. So how has the work, changed since you started in 2000? Now we're probably like in the mid 2000s. This part of your career with your company. But how has the work changed from then till now? And what are some of the things that you do?
So initially, it was strictly PR and events, and I did a lot of events, a lot of fundraising events, a lot of grand openings. PR, as far as writing for newsletters, writing press releases, feature articles. And it expanded to branding and design and websites. And then as we got further along into the 2000s, digital media is so huge, digital marketing. So now we do a lot of digital marketing. We do social media marketing, pay-per-click, SEO, remarketing, websites. So we had to get into everything. We had to expand as our clients' needs were expanding.
Yeah. And then, what was it? Late or mid 2000s, then you had this idea that you wanted to open a restaurant.
Yes. So 2007, I had this bright idea. My youngest, Katie, was going off to college and I was facing the empty nest syndrome. And I thought, what am I going to do now? I wasn't busy enough. And hospitality has always been in my blood. I love to entertain. I've worked bartending, waitressing, in the industry. I love to cook. And it just seemed natural for me. Everybody thought I was absolutely crazy, from your dad to my friends, the accountants, the lawyers. Everybody said I was out of my mind, but it's something that I really wanted to do. And your dad will tell you, I have this quality, if you tell me, don't you tell me, I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove you wrong and prove that I can do it. So I built the business from the ground up. As far as branding it, it was called Corcoran Restaurant. I wanted it to be a concept of wine bar and restaurant. I helped with the menu development, events, and I loved it. It wasn't an easy business, but I was glad that I did it. I don't regret it.
So what were some of the challenges?
Well, the restaurant business is tough. It could be brutal. It's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. It forces continuous innovation to succeed. I mean, you constantly have to be reimagining yourself because trends change so quickly. I also learned quickly how tough you have to be. You can't, I used to worry about everybody liking me. In a business like that, you can't worry about that. And that being tough, I learned, can be construed as being a bitch, frankly. My kitchen staff used to call me the heels of doom because they knew when I was marching in there with my heels clicking on the floor on a busy Saturday night that there was a guest out front who was not happy, and that meant that I wasn't happy. So they would run in the other direction and it would be the heels of doom are coming. So I remember when I first was getting ready to open, I read Danny Meyer's book, Setting the Table. I was just in the planning stages, and it cemented my goal of wanting that strong focus on hospitality and guest experience, which I carried through the 10 years. The first time that somebody told me that they were disappointed, that a guest said, I didn't like the food, the experience was disappointed, I took it so personally because I wanted that focus on satisfaction to be my primary goal. And I did learn eventually that, you could try as hard as you can, but you can't make everybody happy all the time. There were highs where, we'd have a fantastic event. We'd be known for doing these crazy events. We'd do Margaritaville and Mardi Gras events and all kinds of things. And once another customer at a different time mentioned that Cork to her was like Disneyland for adults. And that, made me feel good because I thought, well, that I'm accomplishing my goal. It's just not an easy business. People think that being in the restaurant business is glamorous, and it's not. You're there working every night. I was there every night, and I never knew what I was going to be doing. Could be hostessing and greeting, which is what I would want to do. You'd want to do the management part. If we were short a waitress, I was waitressing. I could be bussing tables. I could be filling it in the kitchen, bartending. I never knew. The only job that I totally shied away from was dishwashing. Our dishwashers were our MVPs because nobody else wanted to do that job, so we treated them right. I have a funny story from a busy Saturday night. I got a call at 5:00, and it was from a local police department. And my dishwasher had apparently threatened his girlfriend, and the police wanted to come and arrest him. And I begged them. We were packed. It was going to be a really busy night. It was early in the night. I said, could I please have until 10:00 until the kitchen closes? And I went back and forth bargaining with the police, and they gave me until 9 if I promised that he would be there at 9:00 when they came. And I assured them that he would be there, and I asked them to please come up the back steps so they didn't parade through the restaurant and take him out. And they did. They did. They came and got him at 9:00, and he left the back way and everything was fine. But, it was moments like that you thought, what did I get myself into? Because it's not what I thought it was going to be.
I was going to say, that's kind of my next question. Like, what were some of the things that you didn't expect to happen or expect the experience to be what it was?
Well, it's definitely a different clientele, a different staff. It's workers like you've never seen. I mean, first of all, it's a night business, so they're night owls, so it's heavy drinking. I dealt with a lot of that, through the years. It's a rotation of chefs, a rotation of staff. There's always somebody that you're, in jail that wants to be bailed out of jail, because I just think it's the industry overall. And I didn't realize that. In my years, I've done a lot of things, but never had experience with things like that. But I mean, I also, on the other hand, it was so fulfilling because of the people that I've met. I have friends now still that are good friends that were from the restaurant. I'm very friendly with staff. I love that.
Yeah. What are some of your proudest moments or experiences when you had Cork?
I think some of them were the creative way that we brought events to the table when we were trying to build business. Shortly after I bought Cork, the economy tanked, and we had to figure out creative ways to build the business. And we instituted like wine pairing and wine dinners, all kinds of theme nights. We had an Elvis impersonator, and we had margaritas out on the patio. We were one of the first restaurants to do outdoor dining and invite, you to bring your pets outdoors. So I was proud of that innovation. I was proud that we had won many Reader's Choice Awards in a lot of the local newspapers and publications, best restaurant, best date night, best wine list. There were many. We reached the number one spot on TripAdvisor locally. And most importantly to me, I was able to use it as a vehicle to give back to the community. We did so many fundraisers for the local charities. Every year we had a Dog Days of Summer fundraiser because the SPCA was so important to me. And for a whole week, we gave back 25% of our proceeds to the SPCA. We allowed everybody to bring their dogs to the patio. We tented it. We did an annual Veterans Day dinner where we fed probably 100 veterans. They got free meals. And that was another item that was just very, very important to me.
Why is that so important to you?
Well, my dad is a veteran. My son was 5 years in the Navy. He's a veteran. So that was all like very, very close to my heart. One of my best experiences of my life, when my son was in the Navy, I applied and got to do what's called a Tiger Cruise. So he was in the Philippine area, came back to Hawaii, and they were allowing 15 different family members of different people on the ship to apply and join them for this cruise that would sail from Hawaii back to California. San Diego was where he was his base was. So, they said Tiger Cruise. Well, I like cruises. Well, I had no idea what it was going to be, but it was a great experience.
It wasn't a glamorous cruise,
no,
right?
It wasn't a glamorous cruise.
Royal Caribbean.
No. So he was actually on a guided missile cruiser called the USS Chancellorsville. So it's a very small, narrow, it's a destroyer, I guess. I guess that's what they call it. So I would say we got on the ship in Hawaii. Everything was beautiful. We're taking pictures. Within the first 10 minutes of actually leaving, there aren't stabilizers on a ship like that, like there are on Royal Caribbean.
So it's a little rocky.
Everybody was sick. All of the newcomers were sick. And luckily, the doctor had given me the patch to take, but I didn't have it on because I never get motion sickness. Well, there were people had plastic bags over themselves. That's how sick they were. So once I got my patch on, I was great. But the whole experience, watching the close quarters and how these sailors, men and women work side by side. And so many of them, as I got to know them, through the week at sea and working with them, I worked in the kitchen, I helped paint, whatever they needed, we did. They left families at home, and just their dedication and how they cared for each other and how they were so considerate in these small quarters. Like that was so eye-opening for me, and I think it's everyday life experiences like that, that add dimension to our lives. And I was just so impressed with that.
Yeah. And shout out to Greg. And by the way, poor Greg, how tall is he?
Greg is over 6 foot.
And he's in a little tiny. Yeah.
Yes. And I'll tell you what the worst part was, the sleeping quarters. Like we didn't have any special quarters or anything. We had to sleep with them. So I was in the berths in the women's sleeping quarters. And when I tell you, like maybe 12 inches, you had to slide yourself in, and I'm extremely claustrophobic. So I would have to sleep like with my arm and my head hanging out because I just felt like the world was going to collapse on me. And then the showers as the ship's rocking back and forth. So the first day I thought, I packed like I was going on a cruise. I was going to shave in the shower, all this dirty water sloshing back and forth. And you can't even stabilize yourself to even wash yourself, let alone shave your legs. So I gave up. I just put my hair in a ponytail, and that was that for the week.
Just rode with the guys and girls. Yeah. So back to Cork. At this time, so you have the restaurant and you're running and operating the marketing PR business simultaneously. So how did you manage to do that and be involved in the community and run both businesses all at the same time?
Well, somehow I had energy then that maybe I don't have right now, but it took a lot of energy, and I think it was the excitement. I think, the one thing about the restaurant business, it's exciting. Every day is a new adventure, and it is exciting, and the marketing business. But I worked at that time, I was working 7 days a week, probably 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. I didn't have much of a home life because that's all I did was work. But I ran across, whenever I would get down, there was somebody told me in business a long time ago, there was this Henry Ford quote, "Don't find fault, find remedy." And it stuck with me. So instead of making excuses when things were tough or for shortcomings, I would just work harder to try to overcome those challenges and obstacles. And I would force myself to try to find solutions. So, you have to have determination. You have to have that fighting spirit. And when you have two businesses like that and your community involvement, you have to want to be able to do everything and succeed. And honestly, when I was young and just starting out and had gotten divorced, if people hadn't have helped me along the way, I don't think I would have been, where I was. There were people that took an interest in me and helped me, guided me on a career path and took a little bit of interest. And I think that's why the community is so important to me. I want to help other people like people helped me.
Mm-hmm. So has there been anyone, even one person or more than one that has been a big influence or a mentor to you?
Well, there was a woman, Regina Peters. She's from Lackawanna County, and she worked for the Scranton Cultural Center. And I first met her when I was in the marketing department of the bank. And she was always trying to help me with career, telling me to be all I can be and encouraging me, to think bigger than where I was. So when I left to start my own business, she was one of the first people that I contacted, and the Scranton Cultural Center actually came on board as one of my first clients. And she encouraged me back then to, have confidence and to build relationships. I think she's one of the ones that really pushed me into the networking and that relationship building. and gave me confidence that the decisions that I was making were the right decisions. And in addition to her, I think my mom and dad, I grew up watching both of them. I came from working class home. Both of them worked very, very hard. My father would work full time. He worked for Mack Truck, and then he was always fixing somebody's car. There was always somebody's car in our garage that he was fixing because all weekend and at night he'd be tinkering with cars. And my mom worked in retail, and she worked all the time too. We didn't see her on holidays because she was always working. So I think they all had an influence on me.
So you had the restaurant for about 10 years, and you ended up ultimately selling the restaurant, and you went out being ranked number one on TripAdvisor. How did you get yourself ranked number one and in this area among so many other great restaurants?
Well, you have to kind of be blunt with asking people if they were happy to review you. So we were lucky because of my marketing background. We put a lot into marketing. We had a nice website. We were easy to find. So we had a lot of travelers. So people that came into town, I also would go around to the local hotels and I would give them our menus, everything you're supposed to do. So we ended up with a lot of travelers, and the travelers would come in and say, well, we found you on TripAdvisor. So if they were happy, I would ask them to please review us so other people can find us. And a lot of that came just from asking. I think if you encourage people to review, now if somebody's miserable, of course you're not going to ask them, but it came from that. It came from just making the ask. And I think a lot of times that happened because I was there. I was there all the time. I was there every night. If you're not there, you really can't do that. You're missing the customer.
So what did you do if you ever maybe either got a bad review or what if somebody came in and had a bad experience? What did you do?
Well, I tried to catch them. It goes back to that Danny Meyer book. You should never let anybody leave unhappy. So if you can catch them while they're there, if they're honest with you, some people, if the kitchen's backed up and the food's taking too long, some people might just not like their meal and they're not going to tell you. And you can't do much about that once they get out the door. But I would, if there was a very bad experience and it was our fault, I would buy the meal. If somebody wasn't that happy, I'd give them a small gift certificate to come back and try us again. And I think people just want to hear that you're sorry, that you wanted it to be a better experience for them. So I would try my best not to let anybody leave the door. There are some people you're going to get bad reviews because some people, maybe they're just not happy to begin with. But even then, there were some people where if it was something that I didn't know about and I did see it on TripAdvisor, you were able to, as the business owner, to contact that person, via email. And I would even put out an apology at that point and say, I would love for you to come back in and give us another try and maybe send them a gift certificate. And some people did take me up on it. So I think it's just trying. It's, taking that step.
So over the years, you've been involved a lot in the community. You're running 2 businesses. You've won a lot of awards. I'll just name a few. Addy Awards for design work, NEPA Business Journal Top 20 Under 40, Athena Award, Greater Wilkes-Barre Small Business of the Year Award for Cork and for Corcoran Communications. Which out of all of them would you say is that you're most proud of?
Well, the Scranton University Small Business Development Center Woman Entrepreneur of the Year was the first. So that had some meaning to me. I remember that was a surprise award. They didn't tell you who won in advance. So they had 3 finalists. And I never would have thought that I had a chance. But my family, my friends, a lot of my clients all decided to come to this luncheon. And I ended up winning. So that did mean a lot because I was there with the people that meant the most to me. But the most recent award, the Athena Award, is probably the one I'm the most proud of. I feel like that's something that you work, your whole career trying to attain. That's given to somebody who strives towards the highest level of professional accomplishment, devotes time and energy to the community, and also mentors others. So I think all of those things combined were all very important to me. Watching the awards video and then hearing how others thought that I positively impacted the community and them through mentoring or through encouragement. I think that, we go through our lives and we do what we do, we work, and we don't really think about how we're affecting others. And it's nice to have that positive reinforcement that we actually are making an impact on other people. So I think that was probably the most meaningful.
That's cool. So back to Corcoran Communications a little bit, after the restaurant, a few years ago, you shifted, I guess, probably a little bit more focus back to the marketing and the PR business. So what's new there? Anyone else work with you at the business?
Well, probably 3 years ago, probably about the time that I sold the restaurant. My son, Greg, he had gotten out of the Navy. He went to Temple and he earned a degree in 3 years and decided to come on board and work with me. He was going to sell. So he did that, and we were specializing. We decided to have a specialization in financial services and specifically credit unions. So he was spearheading that. And at this same time, too, digital marketing just became so big. So he pretty much self-taught, the two of us did, how we were going to, capture this next audience and fill these needs. So I have Greg, he's working from his house in Philly. I'm still working from home. I never got a formal office. We have 2 designers that work with us, both virtually from their homes, a web designer who works virtually. So it's a true virtual agency. And Greg's title now, he's attained the title of VP of Sales and Digital Marketing.
Did he give that title to himself?
He did give that title to himself. So Greg, he concentrates on digital and social media marketing, PPC, SEO, marketing automation, email, remarketing, digital display, and sales. And I do concentrate on the overall marketing and branding for our clients and creative concept and copy, content marketing, blogging, PR, events, and some social media. So you can see that we are both jacks of all trade.
Yeah, I was going to say, how are your roles kind of different?
I think he doesn't get at all involved in the design or content end of it. He focuses on that digital and the client contact. He still does a lot of the sales and acts almost as, we don't like to say we have account managers because it's one of us that you're dealing with. So we kind of split the clients down the middle, and some he's the point of contact and some I'm the point of contact. So we don't, we work well together most of the time. A mother and son, aren't going to have.
I was going to say.
We have our ups and downs, our creative differences. You know how he is.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I think it's a good working relationship. We start our days every day with an 8:00 Zoom call or a phone call to go over the projects that are pending and new projects. And, we have our input and we discuss things. So I think when it comes to creativity and content, I have the final say with some of that. And then some of the things that I don't know as much about, like the SEO, he has the final say. I think we're smart enough to know that the other one has strengths, and we're going to let them trust in them to make the right decisions.
What's your favorite part of the business? What do you like doing the most?
God, I love it all. I have so many diverse clients in so many diverse industries. I think that's what I like most, is that I'm never bored because I'm not working in just one industry or on just one project. So I'm doing design, I'm writing an article. I enjoy coming up with unique concepts and working with my designers to bring those to life. I enjoy the blogging and the content development. And I enjoy the successes. I seeing your success, a success that you have when you get somebody to the top of the Google rankings or something like that. That is what I enjoy most.
I was going to say, what are some of your great client success stories?
A lot of them have to do with the Google searches, since we've gotten so much into, again, self-learned content marketing, and SEO. We do so much research. If you're a business coming to us, and you have a specific goal, I want to get to the top. For instance, I have a medical equipment client and wanted to get to the top of the searches for cardiac equipment and other things that he sold. And I mean, it's a tough, long process, but through content, we were able to get him to the top of the rankings on so many different products. And I mean, we did it for Corcoran Printing as well, as you know, just from focusing on content.
How long does something like that take? What all is involved? Because I feel the average person listening probably doesn't really realize all that goes into it.
Well, a lot of research up front. So what you think people might be searching for isn't necessarily what people are searching for. And again, tying it back to your business, you have to be careful what you call things, because people might search, you want to do, you're known for cigar rings, and we have you top of the Google pages for cigar rings. But you don't want to get somebody who's having a wedding and just wants 50 cigar rings. You want a big
client. Brand that's selling, buying 5 or 10,000.
Right. So it's discerning, what's the difference in what are the people with that wedding searching for as compared with somebody with a bigger company. So it's a lot of research. And then once we develop it, we have the research, we figure out what those keywords are, and it's crafting that content around those keywords. And Google doesn't like if it's the same content over and over again. So if you're writing 5 different pages of content that are cigar bands or medical equipment, every one of those pages has to be different. Whether it's a blog or a web page. So it's all that work. It's the research, figuring out what those words are, and then it's posting it and it's, linking. And so there's a lot to it.
A lot of back-end work.
A lot of back-end work that nobody knows about.
Like how many pages of content do you think it takes to really get somebody up in the ranks on Google?
It doesn't take as many as you'd think. I have another client who's a law firm, and they're a smaller law firm in the area, but a very good law firm. And they're blowing away a lot of the larger law firms with their rankings just by the types. So say it's auto accidents, and we do 4 pages on auto accidents. It's the types and what we're saying because we know what people are searching for. So it doesn't take 50 pages on the same topic. It just takes well-written,
the right
what people
content
are actually looking for.
Yeah.
Now, if you have the medical equipment supplier had maybe 25 different products he wanted to advertise, well, then it does take a lot more.
Yeah. So what else? I mean, what's the future look like for you?
Well, geez.
You probably should write a book.
Well, it's funny that you ask. So I write the Sunday column for the Times Leader, and one of my recent columns was about the changes I'd like to make with myself for 2021. And one of the things is, and I think it goes back to COVID and being stuck in the house for almost a year and being a little bit bored, is I'm committed to trying something new every month to find new things that I might enjoy. So I have this long list of things that I want to try to see what sticks. And this is like new classes, new workouts. I want to learn Italian, believe it or not. I want to learn about meditation. I want to learn to play chess from watching The Queen's Gambit. I want to take horseback riding lessons. I think I got that from Yellowstone. And I think my only time on a horse was in Mexico on the beach on this little slow horse that took off, and I actually got scared, but I want to take lessons anyway. And this is just the immediate future. Like there are some things that I want to do. You mentioned the book. As far as the long term, I do love writing, and I like to write about what I like to write about. So I do want to write a book. The Sunday column enables me. It's called Life at Full Throttle, and they enabled me to write about whatever I want to write about. So whatever I enjoy, whether it's travel, which I love, or things going on in the community or cooking, I could write about whatever. So I have that book right now on my to-do list. I have a book or 2, actually probably 2, but I need to find the time to do it, and that's not happening this year.
Yeah. So what about some other passions? I mean, you brought the dogs with you today. I think we have to talk about the dogs a little bit.
Yes. So I have a passion for rescues. I really am a big supporter of the SPCA and Blue Chip and NEPA Pet Fund. So I've had 3 rescues. Snickers, who has passed away, who's from the SPCA, who was probably the love of my life. And now I have Maddie and Dixie. So Maddie is from Blue Chip. And I've had her from puppies. She was, they think that she came from a breeder, and the breeder just kind of tossed her. She ended up in the woods for a week before they were able to catch her. And Dixie came from Mississippi. And none of my dogs are good dogs. None of them are well behaved. None of them are well trained. They're spoiled, rotten dogs. I'm a terrible dog owner. But I give them more love, that you could possibly imagine. And they bring so much to my life. Like I feel whenever, I'm in a bad mood or unhappy about something, like you look at those dogs, and especially when the kids are all grown and gone, the house is alive. And then I love to travel. That's another passion of mine. And I've been lucky. A few of my trips have been a trip to visit relatives of my mother's back in Italy, who I never met before. And it was an interesting trip because I didn't speak Italian and still don't, and they didn't speak any English. So we had no way of communicating. So it was very interesting and fun.
How did that come about?
Your dad and I were going to take a trip to Italy just to see like Rome and Venice, the sites we've never been. And he encouraged me. I was a pen pal with my cousin back when I was young, when I was still in school. So I looked back at some of the letters, and I think the last time that I wrote to him was when I was a senior in high school. So I wrote a letter to the old address to see if he was still there, and it turned out he wasn't, but his father was. So his father got him the letter, And it was probably 3 weeks later that I got an email from him saying, he worked for the chamber in Florence, but didn't speak English. So we had to have people go back and forth and translate for us. So I told him that I was interested in visiting where my relatives were from, which was San Donato di Nina. It's south of Naples. So he and his wife came and picked us up at the Rome airport and drove us down there. And it was just, it was like stepping back in time to this little old-fashioned village where the roads were so narrow and steep that you couldn't go up with cars. They had to send a golf cart down to take my luggage up. And it was just a simple, beautiful way of life. And it honestly, to this day, is probably one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Wow, that's really cool.
So I want to do more of that. I want to go back to Europe. Other favorite trips, I did a week-long drive up the Pacific Coast Highway from San Diego to Sacramento with my daughter, Katie. She lives out there. That was another wonderful trip. We did a Greek cruise. So right now I have a travel bucket list, which your father doesn't really like. But do you want to hear what's on my bucket list?
Yep.
I want to go to Africa, Machu Picchu, the Galapagos Islands, the Maldives, Ireland, and more Italy and Greece. So as you can imagine, his wallet doesn't really.
His wallet doesn't like it.
And I also want to explore more of the U.S. because I feel like we have so much beauty here and I haven't seen so much of it. I want to do Montana and places like that. And I think, some trips like that might enable me to take the dogs along so I don't have to leave them. And what's another passion? I think the community and the local business is probably another final big passion of mine. As a small business owner, I'm just so passionate that our businesses, that we support our local businesses, we support our local charities to keep our economy healthy and our, community healthy.
Yeah, I mean, especially right now. I mean, what a tough time. I mean, especially for some of the local restaurants.
I know. And that's very close to my heart. So I try to do my part. And whether it's doing takeout a few times a week and not cooking and trying to promote them. And, I think even beyond that, there are other things we can do. Like, we talked about TripAdvisor. Leave a good review. Maybe it's something you don't think of and you go to the same restaurant all the time. Leave a review. Put something positive on social media, share one of their posts. Just next time you call, ask them how they're doing. I just think, it means a lot. And when you think about it, they're always very friendly to you, the ones that you know. So I think if we turn around and, return that favor, I think we have the ability, if everybody tries, to keep them afloat for now.
Yeah, definitely. So you're originally not from Northeast PA. You're from Lehigh Valley. Mm-hmm. Obviously you've been here most of your life. So what is your favorite thing about the area?
This area?
Yeah.
I think the nature, the hiking, the ability, especially I live in Bear Creek. So I love going to the Bear Creek Preserve and Francis Walter Dam where, we went all the time when you were young. I love that outdoor feel and that, it's right in our own backyard, 15 minutes. My husband used to tease me that I would want to take a ride down to Jim Thorpe to go for a bike ride or to hike. And he would be, we're passing 20 other places on the way down because we live right in this and the change of seasons. I don't like winter anymore, but I like fall when the leaves are changing.
Yeah.
So that's probably my favorite, nature.
So any advice for any young entrepreneurs or women in business or anyone that might be listening?
Well, I have a lot of advice.
All right, let's hear it.
So the first is, I think the first thing that enabled me to even venture out on my own was, taking a risk. And I think you really need, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to start a business, you need to be willing to take a chance. Big chances make big payoffs. I always say, go big or go home. You're going to win or you're going to lose, but you're never going to know if you don't try. And then I also think, you need to make some of your own luck. And I do mean make your own luck. You need to make some bold moves. Everything's so competitive right now. Any industry you're in is just very competitive. So you have to kind of do something that's unanticipated, unexpected, travel down that path that nobody else is going down and you won't regret it. And I also think embrace failure. We've all had a ton of failures. I've had them, you've had them. Any experience, you're going to have your fair share of failure. So it's a necessary part, I think, of reaching our goals, of being successful. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. So you're not grasping for something that's out of your reach. You need to learn from that failure. I look at every failure as an opportunity to learn and not to make that same mistake again. I also think finding a mentor like I had in Regina, I've been a mentor to a lot of women. Other women have been mentors to me, Lori Nacito at Leadership Wilkes-Barre and other people like that. That's been important to me. Educate yourself. I think from those early days when the kids were little and I went back to school for information systems to learn about computers, and that helped me get back into the job market, the educating has never stopped. For me, it's been ongoing. Things in our industries, and again, it's something change every day. And you can't keep going back to college and you can't take courses. You can't take a 6-month course to learn something that you need to know tomorrow.
It'll be gone by the next day.
Right. So you need to really teach yourself, educate yourself. And, I'd say 75% of what I know in marketing is self-taught, but it's the way it has to be. And you can't give up on that. You can't think I have my degree, I can just rest on my laurels. It's not the way it is. You also, I think, have to develop some type of competitive advantage. You have to look at your competition. I think for our business, what makes us different is the personalized attention. You get us, you get Greg or I. That's who you're dealing with. You're not dealing with somebody you don't know. You're not calling and not getting one of us. We go above and beyond. Like you have our cell phone numbers, our home numbers, you can get us whenever you need us. And I think that we have a lot of very loyal customers, and it's because of that. They know that they can count on us, whatever they need, whenever they need it. I think you have to focus on your reputation, building it and keeping it, and know that it's not something, you have to earn your reputation. So it's a lot of hard work. You're not going to be a famous business person. You know what I mean?
Overnight.
Your first year in business. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of getting to know people, but you have to work on that. You have to think about, if I make this move, is it going to ruin my reputation? Stay reputable and don't do anything shady. I think that, you have to be flexible in business. You have to have a competitive spirit. If I didn't have a competitive spirit, like where I was refusing to fail, I never would be where I am. And you have to work hard. I'm not telling you anything you don't know with that. And I think, as far as being a leader in business, you have to remember that I think that real leadership is about serving. It's about serving the community. It's about serving the people that you work with. I think it's our job to inspire the people around us, and I think that that's another thing that's served me well, is knowing that I want to serve others. I want to be, that inspiration in our community. And a lot of the organizations that I was involved with, Leadership Wilkes-Barre, Junior League, and doing so much for our community really reinforced that in me. And I think, that's my advice.
Yeah. So how can our listeners connect with you online?
They can find us online on our website at corcoranpr.com. They can find us on Facebook at Corcoran PR, or they can find us on LinkedIn.
And give another little plug to your Sunday column. It's Sunday, right? Yeah, Sunday in the Times
column,
Leader.
Front of the weekend section. And it's called Life at Full Throttle. I'm in my motorcycle jacket in the picture.
All right. And then when you write that book or two, then we'll have to have you back on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining me today on the Stacks podcast. Ruth Corcoran, Corcoran Communications, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag #OnTheStacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on the Stacks.